And let's roll. Is live. All right, everyone, welcome to Bizapalooza Chat. This is our plugged in version, which meets every Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And every week, we tune into the biggest issues for small business owners. And today's issue is all about collaborating virtually. And for that, I have brought in the best experts who know a thing or two about virtual collaboration. And that is the folks over at Glip. And the number one person for that is our friend, Paul Camarado. Hi, Paul, and welcome.
Hey, Ivana, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I am so glad you're here. So what we're going to do is get right started, Paul. Let's talk about virtual collaboration. What is up with it? Is it an oncoming trend? Yahoo has reversed and brought people in. What's going on with virtual collaboration? Are we up or are we down?
Oh, I think it's definitely up. I mean, for the last 10 years, we've only seen more and more people work remotely. We saw a study recently that showed that the size of our remote workforce doubled in the last 10 years. And really, there's one driver of that, and that's the fact that we can do it. And that's because of advances in technology. You think about 10, 15 years ago, when you're trying to take your laptop home and then you try and go and log in with your VPN and you try and access your server from from home to your office, and it takes you 20 minutes to open an Excel file. I mean, and we still have some companies that are like that today, don't get me wrong, but it's getting easier and easier for more and more companies to have access to these technologies that allow people to work remotely. So in the past, it's not really been possible or feasible for a lot of types of workers. And so now it's just becoming a lot more practical and doable. And that opens up a whole new conversation of, okay, now that we can do it, should we do it? And the answer is yes, I think.
Excellent, excellent. I think so the answer is yes, we should definitely be doing collaboration. I'm going to hop over to the Twitter chat and let you know that we have several folks in here that are adding to the conversation. One of them is Tim Berry. I'm not sure if you know him, but he says that he believes that remote collaboration will be the norm. So I think that's really, really, I think it's true. I mean, I've been running a virtual team for a really long time, and I can't imagine doing it otherwise. I mean, I think it's definitely the way it's going to go. So talk a little bit more about, so you really believe people will be working from home more. What are some of the things, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but what do you think that's driving this trend?
Well, like I said, the first thing is the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Where before this wasn't possible. I mean, I haven't been working for a long time, but over a decade. And even at some of my previous jobs, you literally could not work from home. It was theoretically possible, but it literally would take 20 minutes to open an Excel doc that is on the shared drive of your company. And then, you can't comply with all the security regulations that your company has, and just none of it worked. So that's the main thing that has changed. And through all of this, you look at Uber. All Uber is a marketplace for taxi drivers. And now you have marketplaces for all kinds of workers. If you want to have people, ghost write for you, if you want to have people design for you on a contract basis. Now, with all of this, you have access to all of this talent that's available everywhere. And if you're in Cleveland and you find this really awesome person in Washington State, in Seattle, maybe that person doesn't want to leave their family, but they really want to work with you. And when you have the means to have access to all your business applications, to be able to talk, to do video chat, to do email, and collaborate in all the ways you need, well, then why would you move if you can make it work? And there's challenges that come with working remotely, but the benefits are clear. I mean, and that's why people vote with their actions, and that's why we're doing more and more remote work.
So let's talk about the other side, right? What was Yahoo thinking? Why did they feel that it was important to pull people back in? Let's talk about the other side of that, right? Like,
I don't know. Maybe they sensed that there was some abuse going on. I mean, that Yahoo story did not end well. It was never going to end well. So, you know, I don't know why they did that. I certainly wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like you can have all the tools at your disposal to help you work better, whether you're in the same office, 10 feet away, or across the country. Tools and technology can enable you to do good things, but at the end of the day, if you're not a good team that's not focused and not doing the right things, that's what matters. So there are these things, learning to work remotely, you know, more productively, and to make all these things work as best as possible. That is all for it, you know, in pursuit of your goal of whatever your business is. So Yahoo's problems had probably nothing to do with working remotely. They had to do with the fact that their business model wasn't working anymore.
I think that's really interesting, right? Because I think, actually, you are so right. A couple things happened that I think really drove that trend. I know for me, I don't know if you're familiar with small business trends, but I'm friends with Anita Campbell, and she lived, Paul, like 2 miles from my house. So we could have gotten together easily. I mean, easily. And we never, ever did. She lives in Florida, and I probably talk to her more now than I did when she was up the street from me. So I think that's really, that's one thing. But I'll tell you what really drove my push towards, and that was back in 2006, my push toward, maybe, was it 2006? When gas was up to $4 and something a gallon, when it first just took this huge rise. I actually sent webcams to some of my clients and said, we should start seeing more of each other. And really pushed everyone to work that way. And one of the things I discovered was that we were actually more productive, because if you're here and I'm here and we have an objective for this meeting, we like totally stay focused, as opposed to you show up, you have some coffee, you chitty chat about the game or like whatever. And the next thing you know, like, you know, time has gone by.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we have lots and lots of comments here. So Kim Beasley, who's a technical person, says, working remotely isn't just the future, it's now. I've had a virtual team since 2012. So I think that's really, really fascinating. And she says that many companies are going to this. It's saving money and time. And it's quicker to collaborate with teams. Talk a little bit about that. You know, saving money, saving time, and the speed of collaboration.
Well, I mean, it saves you money because you don't have to, you know, if you're going to go hire somebody and relocate them, or, you know, even just pay for the office space and all of the other overhead costs that comes with that. You know, the saving time of the commute. I'm fortunate. I have a 5-minute commute, so I'm in the office most days. But, you know, there's a lot of people I work with who in normal traffic here is, you know, 1.5 to 2 hours one way. I mean, that, you know, time is money. That's significant when you're spending 3 to 4 hours a day just traveling, just commuting. So you when you work remotely and you don't have to commute, that saves a lot. And I would say that there's something to working remotely, working from home, wherever it is, that a lot of times, we saw recently a study that said remote workers, 90% of remote workers said that they're more productive when they're remote. And I know me, I don't work from home all the time, but when I do, man, am I productive. And it's not that I'm working 10 hours straight. I take breaks, but it's like you said, when you're at the office, your breaks are chit chat and coffee, which hopefully we can talk about a little bit later, because that has value. Don't get me wrong. But when I'm at home and I take breaks, I'm doing stuff around the house that I normally do when I get home. You know, because most people go through cycles where they can work for an hour, or, you know, hour and a half, whatever, and take breaks. But there's just so many less distractions. There's nobody coming to tap you on the shoulder. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, I'm a shoulder tapper. You know, I'll walk over to somebody's desk, tap on the shoulder, and say, "Hey, I need this." You know?
Right. Oh so, my God, right? I am, and if your door is open, I'm like, yeah. Hey, right?
And who wants that? You know, who wants that? Even when you're at work, people prefer to be talked to through a chat or an email, you know, because they're in the middle of their zone.
Absolutely. So in preparing for this, and I don't know if this is something you've had in one of your articles, but I saw this and I thought it was really, really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the differences between being a virtual employee, right? And what was the other one? Let's say a virtual employee and working from home. And there's actually some other categories there too, right? There's working remotely, working from home, virtual employee. Like, what, do you guys have designations for this? Right?
Well, there's only so much meaning a term can have. I mean, it boils down to what you do. So if I have some coworkers who work from home 1 day a week and they're literally going home and working from home, here at RIngCentral, we call it working from home. But it's funny. Just last week, I had this colleague. We have our team messaging app where we chat, and we have a group for our team of about 12 people. And one of my colleagues, he says, "Hey guys, today I'm working from home at Starbucks to work on a big project." And it's like he said the term working from home, and then in the next breath, I'm at Starbucks. So I don't know. To me, it's a distinction without much of a difference. It's are you in the office with all of your team, or are you somewhere else? And where in the past maybe you were set up to do work at home because you were tethered to a land connection of internet, I don't know. But today it doesn't matter. If you've got the internet, you can work from anywhere.
Yeah, because to me, when I hear, in my mind, working from home, to me says I'm employed at a company and I normally go into an office, but today I'm not. And then I could be anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a virtual employee might be someone who's like my bookkeeper. She's in Colorado, and all she does, she's not full-time, she's not whatever, she just does this particular function for me, right? So I don't care what's going on with her life. She's not an employee. I don't care what she does as long as my books are done. I'm a happy camper, right? So that is like what would I call that? A virtual, not even an employee. What do you call that? A free agent.
But let me ask you this. So I'm in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and we have a big office in Denver. We have an office in Charlotte, North Carolina. The people I work with there, are they virtual? It's like, they're virtual to me. I don't see them every day. I had somebody I work with in a different country. Me and my colleague who sits right by me, we've been working with her on and off for a year. And we just saw her 2 weeks ago for the first time. She ran and gave us a big hug, because we've never actually met.
Because you feel like
it's like, virtual, in your scenario, maybe they're virtual and they work from home in a different state and they're always there and not part-time. But to me, if they're in a different office, they're virtual. I have people in this building who I talk to only through chat or email and almost never see. So for me, the distinction is becoming so minimal between whether if you're in the office part-time, you're home part-time, if you work from home all the time or a different office. I feel like all these advances in technology are breaking down those barriers. And the only difference is there is some benefit. There is definitely benefit to actually having the physical, I'm in person with you type thing.
And it used to be, and like you were saying, I think we've talked about this, it used to be that one of the big negatives of working from home, or why people feel they can't work from home or be whatever, not in an office, right, is that they miss the interaction. And I was having a conversation with my mom, and she's like, wow, no one's been to my house. All I've been doing is talking to people on the phone. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, all my relationships, Paul, every relationship, some of my best friends are people that I only know online or have maybe met once or twice or whatever. I mean, these are all of my relationships and conversations happen online like this.
Yeah, but think about it, because if you live in Cleveland, there's only so many people there, and now you have access to everybody. I have old friends from the Air Force who I talk to regularly, and we chat, we talk, and we FaceTime. And I haven't seen some of them in years. And I have a best friend who lives 20 miles from me, and I haven't seen him in 6 months, but we still talk. Because we're both busy with our lives. So it's not a bad thing that if you haven't met these people. I would say it's what I try and do as much as possible is turn the video on.
Yes.
Just because it creates more of a connection.
Exactly.
I think.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about mistakes. What are some common mistakes that folks make whether in the transition of working from home or virtual or managing virtual team, what are some mistakes that you see remote workers making?
I think one of the bigger things is closing the loop with others. So when you're in a meeting, and this happens in the office too, and most meetings that we're in, we have people who are both remote and in person, but it's walking away from a meeting with actual action items and understanding who has to do what. So I think the best way to start a meeting is when you're going to send a meeting invite is having a purpose, an agenda, let everybody know what's going to be discussed, what they need to bring, what the goals of the meeting are. And then you have somebody during the meeting actually taking notes. And the most important part is at the end, clarifying, okay, Ivana, you have to do 1, 2, and 3. You have to do it by next Tuesday. And if you have any questions, let these people know. And you can verbalize at the end of the meeting, but it's really important, I think, to either send out a follow-up email or a chat message to the whole team to document all this so everybody sees it. And that also gives a chance for people to say, oh, I misunderstood that. Let me clarify this. So
smart. And that's like a best practice no matter what, right?
Exactly. But when you're remote, you can turn off the meeting and you go back to doing your laundry in between your working time, when you're taking a break. I may not talk to you for 2 days, where honestly, when I'm in the office, I could say, oh, did I understand what Natalie told me? Let me just go walk over and just tap her on the shoulder like I always do and say, hey, was I supposed to do this or were you? And it's harder to at times to communicate with those people in a very timely fashion. So it's a little bit more important to make sure you close the loop on everything that you're supposed to do in those meetings up front, I would say.
Awesome. So what other mistakes do you see? I mean, one of the things that a lot of folks here on Twitter, let me read you some of the things that folks are saying. Well, of course, there's folks responding to number 2, which was all about the distinction between working from home. And we talked about that. It says virtual means you can work from anywhere as long as you're somewhere that you can focus on the task at hand. And I think that's an important point. Kim is back saying not having boundaries regarding office time or work area. That's a mistake that people make, right? Where you have to be able to be focused and like not get distracted by the laundry, right?
But here's the thing, when all of this technology is enabling everybody to work wherever they want, you can go down a rabbit hole of saying, well, they're not going to be focusing on the work, this and that. But the bottom line is you should judge people based on their performance in these types of roles. And so that's all you have to do is, are you doing the job well or not? I'm not sure we should care if they need to have their butt in the seat for a certain amount of time. You should care, are they getting the work done and how fabulous is their work?
Exactly. And I want to point out here, Just Drive Media says not having reliable tools and tech in place. So connections fail, having a backup plan in place. And I got to tell you, this is, again, this can be true for anything, but I just had a friend of mine who had a virtual assistant who was living in the middle of this hurricane. And so she was out of electricity. They had a webinar to run and she called me up. I referred her to another VA who was and she says, I paid her to be on standby. Yeah. And that just the ability to have that flexibility and that structure in place in case technology fails, because that could really get in the way if you're not prepared with tools and tech, right?
Oh yeah.
Are there any other mistakes that folks make?
I mean, going back to the issue of turning on your video. So when people communicate, I mean, how many times have you read from how many different sources that so much of communication is nonverbal,
right?
In your body language and even in the tone and the pitch and the way that you speak. It's not just the words, but it's how you say it and how you deliver it. When you're just chatting and emailing all day, that, that's where you can get into those nasty back and forth emails and people getting mad at each other. And if only you just, turned on the video chat and had a face-to-face conversation, and all of a sudden it becomes a lot less, enticing to be difficult to that person. And all of a sudden you're faced with the fact that there's a human being on the other end. So it's keeping that human touch. that which can be done through video and through other things. No matter how you're talking, it's like, how's the weather in Cleveland? You know, how are the Cavaliers doing? You know, how is your vacation, or where are you going for your next vacation? You know, just a little chit chat. Going back to the very beginning where you said, oh, well, when you're remote, you don't waste time at the water cooler. And that's true. But the flip side of that coin is there's a lot of value in spending those bits of time developing those relationships. Because teamwork is not, I mean, we talk about collaboration, but it's all about teams working together and teamwork. And teamwork is not easy. And the closer a team is, the more effective they're going to be. The better they know each other, the more shorthand they have, the quicker they can move and adapt. And they don't have to talk for 5 minutes explaining a correction that needs to be made. They can just go very quickly because they're used to it. And having those little conversations and building that relationship on an individual and a team basis is really important. And, you know, it makes sense that that's harder to do when you're virtual or you're remote.
Yeah.
But it's still important. And that's why on chat, I love sending GIFs, you know, those animated pictures, you know, where you can have, there's just countless ones of those. And all it does is that creates that emotional bond and that connection that helps keep you together and realize that you're not just working with a computer. There's actually a person on the other end who has feelings and ambitions and is tired and exhausted just like you.
And, you know, I know I'm letting some of the questions go, and we'll get to those, but I definitely want to ask, because I think this would be a really valuable tip for our listeners and our audience. I know that I have certain rules about when to transition from email or from a text-based conversation into an audio-based conversation into a face-to-face conversation, even if it's on video. Do you have some sort of like guidelines or rules where you're like, you know what, I need to have a phone conversation or something?
Well, I think it's all based on, this is just for me. For me, It's based on the experience of your team and who you're working with. I don't have any set rules. I mean, me personally, I err on the side of let's escalate this to a different way. Like, let's go from chat to phone. Let's go from phone to video. Mm-hmm. But it's more just based on your gut, which, you know, your gut is your experience and all of your past knowledge and expertise. So I wouldn't say I have any set rules of when to escalate. If there's going to be, I would put it a different way. I think there's different uses for email, for chat, for phone and video. And for me, phone and video, you know, a voice call and a video call are very, very similar. I think,
right.
I mean, a phone call is a video call with the video turned off. You know, like there's no difference. So to me, I lump it into email, into chat, and into video. And if you're looking to communicate, like I want to give a big project update on this tweet chat that we're planning, email is a great tool for that. Right. And then all of a sudden, if there's a back and forth about tons of little questions of how we're going to do it, you know, you could take that to a chat, but if all of a sudden you just want to do a review of it, then just pick up the phone or turn on your video chat. So, you know, and then you have chat. Almost every time I want to go tap on somebody's shoulder to get something really fast, you know, that sending somebody a team message, like a chat message, that's the tap on the shoulder. And that's why that's so much more effective, because you don't have to be bothering people and interrupting their flow. They're going to look at it sooner than they're going to look at their email. And chat can be a good substitute for a live conversation, or maybe like a near live conversation where every few minutes you're responding and then you leave for a half hour and you come back and you can read the conversation, and it's not super important. And then I think because everybody's so busy that these live, you know, whether it's on the phone, a video, or live in person, that's for when you really have a purpose, meaning a scheduled meeting, something that you really have a structured thing that you're going to walk through, or there's something that we just need to handle now in an emergency. Because, you know, I think about it on my personal phone, the last thing I want is for anybody to just call me out of the blue. You know, it's disruptive. There's only one person who does that, and that's my mom. You know, not even my wife calls me out of the blue. She'll text me first.
That is a new thing. And I have that. I wonder if that's some new etiquette, because I definitely prefer like text me first, or even on Skype, there's like this understanding of do not call me out of the blue because like I could be doing this. And we all understand that stuff is happening.
Because, but think about it. This goes back to the changes in technology. So before it was never an issue, but I'm sorry, if you didn't call somebody, how else were you going to get a hold of them? There was no better alternative,
right?
You know? So because that alternative is there, it changes the dynamic. And so I recommend that you don't just call people out of the blue unless you're somebody's mom or dad calling their kid.
Exactly.
And I call my mom too. I don't text my mom and ask her. I just call her and I expect her to answer.
Exactly.
But nobody else do I expect that of.
Exactly. It's such a great point. I love that. Makes me smile, right? So true. Let's talk about accountability, right? Because we talked a little bit about having structure and how structure was important. And I've asked the folks the same question about accountability, and we've got all kinds of answers. Things like use a task list and guidelines, says Kim. It's interesting too. She says she uses Upwork. I totally get that because I use Upwork too to manage my virtual team. They make it so easy. Tim Berry says, part of the answer is systematically changing accountability from butts and seats to measurable outputs. That's what you were saying. So what are some of the ways that you guys recommend keeping folks accountable and keeping, a structure in place?
Well, it's the first thing that we just mentioned actually just now and a few minutes ago. It's just measuring results. There's a Dr. Pepper, the company. They have this saying, they have a few sayings, but one of them is inspect what you expect. I mean, which is management 101. Nothing's going to get done until you start measuring it and managing it. So just by measuring outcomes is, 80, 90% of management's job of whatever it is that you're managing. So managing those outcomes, you hire the right person, they'll get those outcomes. But at a more detailed day-to-day level, it's finding those project management, organizational tools and just best practices that help you document things. Because again, if you're not sitting in the same office, what I do to my colleagues, I just look up and I say, hey, Jim, what are we doing on this again? Or are you going to do this? You can't just do that when you're remote. So you have to find better ways to document it. If it's project management tools, using agendas. I find old-fashioned agendas to be very, very helpful. In a previous role, I worked in a shop that had a union, and I used to have monthly labor management meetings where I would co-chair it with the union leader. And we ran those meetings on an agenda and certain meeting rules, and it was so effective, and it was so good to keep us on track and to do follow-up items and assign owners and timelines. So, I mean, it's about finding what works for your team. I personally like agendas because they're simple, they're free form, and then you revisit it last time. Okay, is there any questions on this? Let's move to the next one. And then you let the people on their team, you let the individual people go out and manage their own projects the way that they want to manage it.
Got it. I think that is absolutely outstanding feedback. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so I have this kind of a personal question, and I know we kind of talked about this. It's about to go out to the cyberspace question. But do you find that you have more relationships with virtual people than you do with face-to-face people? I know we just talked about this, right? Like you have a friend that lives close by, you don't see them very often. I don't know. How does that work now for you?
I mean, honestly, to me, the lines are blurred. I mean, yes, are there some people who are virtual and so remote that I may never meet them? Yes. But then there's also people like that here who I think in to a large degree, I'll work the same way with people, whether they're remote or not, whether they're 5 feet from me or not, because with these advances in the technology that allow you to work wherever you want, and then chat and video and all of these little things, what it does is it's not about, well, you're here, so I have to go talk to you. It's about what's the best way for me to communicate. So I find for anybody who works in an office nowadays, in front of a computer, think about it. If you're a super productive person who works all day in front of your computer screen and your head is down, your headphones are on, I don't know what the difference is between you doing that there at the office and you doing it at home. And you're still chatting with people. And when you go to a meeting, maybe you go into the office, but I know lots of people here who will just put their headphones on and turn on their video and take it from their desk. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't know if I have more conversations with one or another. I mean, I would say I do develop closer relationships. I work at a big company. You know, we're a fairly large company at RIngCentral, and I work with a lot of virtual people, but I have my team here of 10, 12 people. We eat lunch every day together. You know, it's 12.
Right.
Let's go have lunch.
Got it.
So, you know, I do have that face-to-face interaction, but, you know, you make it up on the other end with the virtual people where you have, you know, moments throughout the day when you chat and you just, you know, kind of shoot the breeze and share gifts. But, you know, it's different because then you're on different schedules. You know, even are you busy right now? Because I'm not, and I want to chat with you, and it's hard to line it up.
Right.
Where I can just go, I can go in person. I tap Jim on the shoulder. I say, "Pay attention to me for 5 minutes while I vent about the problem." You know, so I don't know. I think the distinction is less, but you know, even though there's a lot of productivity benefits to being virtual and remote, and sometimes when you have the best talent that's not nearby, that's what you do and you make the best of it. But of course, there is always benefit to being face-to-face and having those moments where you're literally in contact.
Agreed. I think that's all great input. And like you said, I think the ability to have these face-to-face conversations, even on camera, really shortcut the entire thing. I've met people, you know, what I like to do, at least with my world, is I will go to conferences or something, right? And that's where I'll get to see people. Like, who knows? I don't know. Maybe you're at a conference and I might show up at a conference and be like, I know you, right? And so that, you know, that's definitely something that, okay, well, so I guess I have to ask this question. How do I want to ask it? I'm sort of feeling like blah, 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 blah. Is there an art to developing virtual relationships? You talked about using gifts. You talked about, you know, I mean, we're used to, although now we have a generation that maybe is just completely grown up with these virtual relationships, right? As you probably get exposed to it so much sooner. But, you know, there's an art to conversation. There's an art to building rapport with someone and so on and so forth. That's kind of different virtually. Like, you know, as I was saying, it might start off on Twitter and then like little tiny things. And then that's actually how we got together, right?
Yeah. So there's my mom. She also texts me. And I don't know if you know, there's this cool app that you can do on your keyboard called Bitmoji. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I use Bitmoji, right?
Oh, so do I. And so this was a couple weeks ago. My mom started sending me like 3 Bitmojis of her. You know, like it was one of the ones with it says Monday and the anvil crushed her and it said Monday. You know, and she sent all these other ones like it's raining with an umbrella. And I said question mark. And she says, "Oh, I'm just having fun." You know, and it's I wouldn't put too much thought into how these new technologies are different in building relationships, because I think we're used to using them, work relationships, because we're used to using them in our personal lives. And you just know how to use them. And what matters at the end of the day is, do you know how to build a relationship with a person? And I think we all know how to text. We all know how to send gifts. We know how to email. We understand that when we put an exclamation point, it makes it less ominous. When we put a smiley face, it makes it happy. You know, if you're the boss and you send an email with a really hard period at the end, you're sending a message. Well,
yeah, there's even a difference I've learned, and this is where I feel like really old, the difference between YEP, yep, and the YUP, yup. I don't know.
No, I didn't know the difference, no.
There's a subtle difference. The YUP, yup, is like not, yep is more happy, YEP is happier, YUP is like when you said hard period. Yeah. It's like that. It's a little harder.
Almost like yeah, totally. Yeah, I see that.
And so I've had to become a lot more conscious of that, right? So let's talk a little bit about personality styles, right? How do you know if working remotely is a good option for you? Because I have lots of friends who are like, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with like not having human engagement, or I can't stay focused, I'll be distracted. How do you know if it's right for you?
Well, I think so you mentioned two possible things. If you can't stay focused and you're distracted, I guess that's one thing, but when you have a job to do and your pay is tied to your performance, I have a feeling that you'll figure out a way to get it done. But if you the type of person who just needs to be near people, I mean, I don't know what there is to do. Maybe working remotely is not for you. If you want to be in a room, in a building with tons of people, 8-10 hours a day, remote working is not going to be for everybody. I do it sometimes. I work from home. I'll go somewhere else. I'm very productive, or when I travel. I'm a pretty gregarious person, so I like the fact that I'm in an office. I wouldn't rule out working remotely, but again, it goes back to your business objectives and the goals you're trying to achieve, and finding the right talent for your team, and then using things like video to make it better and keep people connected. We've read about some companies that have going back to, we were talking about how we have an office here in California, right, and in different locations, and as far as I'm concerned, they're virtual to me. Maybe they're going to work with other people, but as far as I'm concerned, they're virtual, and our offices are separated. So some companies will turn on a video, in a certain area, and you just have it there, so you can just feel their presence, and you can see them working. So there's things that you can do to help people feel more connected, like keep the video on all day. But, of course, there's going to be some personalities who are not well suited to working remotely. And, I don't know what you're going to do. Some people just won't want to do that.
Maybe it's I don't want to, right? And I could definitely see perhaps a person that definitely wants more separation. Although I've heard tips of people working remotely, like have a separate space and whatever. I don't need that. I don't need to stay focused. I'm perpetually connected. My husband and my son complain all the time, to the point, Paul, that I actually track. I use Toggl, Toggl, to track what I'm doing at any time, whether it's business or personal, because sometimes like you, I'll insert these different things, right? And I can't imagine going to work in an office. I don't need that hard space. Yeah. I'm totally okay. Like, just because I'm sitting here, and I normally will work from here, but I could just as easily work outside or in the kitchen or like in front of the TV or like whatever.
But look, so what you just said is you don't need to be constrained by an office. But I feel like offices today, at least for knowledge workers, it's one thing if, well, what's your job? I build cars. Right, okay. Right. Yeah, or I fly a jetliner. I fly people across the country. So it's like, but if you're in an office job, a knowledge worker, to be successful, companies need to apply those same mentalities and same rules, where you're not feeling, because you're an office worker, you need to be here 8 to 5 at this time, and this and that, and no flexibility. So I feel like the same, not loose, but looser mentality than the traditional work office mentality needs to come through for companies to successfully recruit that kind of talent. So you just said, like, I don't want to feel constrained. So if there's an office environment that makes you feel constrained, people are not going to want to work there, even if they go to work.
Got it. I think that's great. And that brings us up to the next question, because I know people have asked me over and over again. I did a webinar with, I think it was Cisco, and we were talking about productivity. And one of the things I mentioned was how you can hire a VA to do a bunch of different things. And people weren't sure what that was. So I made a huge list of jobs that you could potentially give a VA. So I'm kind of curious, what kind of jobs do you feel are best suited for remote work? We just talked about knowledge workers. Maybe let's get a little bit more specific about that. I suppose I'm a knowledge worker. I create content, right? Or strategies, or I talk to people, but it's all about exchanging knowledge. That's easy. What other folks might fall into the knowledge worker category?
I mean, well, let's talk about some things that don't.
Okay.
If you run a sandwich shop, can you work remotely? No.
Correct.
If you're giving somebody a physical service, or moving them from somewhere, like being a pilot, or you're building something, you got to be there. But as a services-driven economy, and most of the services, well, I don't know most, but at least a lot of the services that are information-based, I mean, it's like, is there a physical requirement for you to be somewhere to do your job? That's the threshold of whether you can be remote or not. And there's so many different things, like sales, marketing, even professionals like lawyers, engineers, doctors can do a lot of work.
I know, even doctors are doing, they started with the radiologists. Yeah. They're like reading scans like all over the place. So you can definitely do that, right? Accounting, financial.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's easier to think of jobs that you can't do remote and then just say anybody else you can, because it becomes pretty clear. I mean, if you're work a garbage truck that goes and brings up the garbage, you can't work remotely. And if you are an attendant at the ballpark, you can't work remotely. But if you're building the schedule for the next baseball season, you can probably work remotely.
Got it. And those are some really, really good examples. I really like that. And I think folks just hadn't considered it. I mean, like, people have broken it down into works like, doing research or answering emails or doing customer service or like all of these things that initially might seem like you can't, but surprise, surprise, you actually can. And I think that's fascinating. And I'm starting to wonder, do you think that list is growing? Like, for example, I know a lot of small business owners who maybe have retail locations and they are really, really struggling because they're like, well, people are just, they're coming to the store, they're browsing along, and then they go and buy it online.
Yeah.
It's really tough. So I think that there is going to become a point where we're going to value physical experiences, where we're going to have to, because knowledge workers are kind of going remote, I think we're going to have to value and maybe redefine physical experiences.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I don't know, for me, it seems almost like it's a no man's land. And we're having that with all the information overload. How many emails do you get? How many people send you messages on how many different platforms a day? That's not going to last forever. That if you've up to date at all about artificial intelligence and machine learning, all of that is, or a lot of it is, an effort to get a handle on all this information overload. And I think with remote workers, you could say, well, it could go overboard and now everybody's gonna be remote, but then you still need to have those physical experiences. I think in all of the chaos, it's working well and it will sort itself out. It's just this whole deluge of information that we're exposed to has made our lives crazy. I don't think, this is just my personal view, I don't think that our future of work is that we're going to continually be bombarded by information that we don't know what to do with just unending emails, and we just feel like we're underwater, because it never used to be like that. And I think now, as these tools help us get a handle of this information and automate a lot of these things, it'll get back more manageable, and maybe we'll focus on things that are more maybe meaningful and closer to, like you said, like the human experiences that provide more value. So, I mean, like, we're in the middle of this craziness, and I think out of the craziness, this remote working is working really well. And, we talk about the technology, and the main thing that's enabling all of this is all of the cloud software applications and all the different cloud tools that let you, like, if you're at an office and you have all the equipment you need to do your job and your face is in a computer all day, because of the cloud, you can do that from anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's really brilliant. So let's kind of shift our conversation a little bit. And I know we've talked about this here and there. Let's talk about collaborating, and let's see if we can come up with some really awesome specific tips for folks on how to collaborate. I have a lot of training in team development, and one of my philosophies is that training is really important. I mean, you really have to learn how to work as a team. Of course, when I was trained, I'm old enough to have been trained when we were talking about like physical teams, like people in a manufacturing facility, in a union organization, and working together, and how to share work, and how to, do all these different things. What are some practical collaboration tips that you can maybe share with folks?
Well, first, I just want to agree with the importance of training. When I started out in the Air Force, I spent over 15 months training before I was allowed to touch my job and do my actual job. And the training was both about the technical aspect of doing it, but also how to work with all the different departments and people and teams, and how to communicate. And understand each other to make sure that there's no ambiguity, because all of that can lead to bad things, not just in the military, but anywhere. So I definitely value the importance of training up front. And I would say, before jumping into some of the practical recommendations for collaborating, things about building a good team is, I don't want it to sound too soft, but it's caring about your team and caring about your people. Because if you're on a team and you feel like your other team members and your boss doesn't care for you, then you're not gonna want to try and solve those problems. So showing that you care, I think, is the first step, and that goes a long way, because chances are you hired people who are smart and who can figure it out anyway. So just motivate them by showing you're invested in their success. But I think, going back to the issue of water cooler talk, at the coffee machine, it's taking the time when you're remote to get to know your people and to chat about the weather, to ask how their dog is doing, who's their favorite sports team. Spend a few minutes just exchanging gifts back and forth. It's okay to, quote, waste a little bit of time, because you're building that relationship so that when the real work matters and happens, that you guys will be in sync, on the same page, and you're actually, and this gets back to the caring portion about your team, honestly, is you want to have everybody invested in each other's success. So I'm going to help you, even because I know in return you're going to help me, and that's better than just me helping me and you helping you. So get to know people. Another thing I would say is, when you're working remotely, especially if you're in different time zones, is know what their time zone is, know what their work schedules are, even if they're in the same time zone, because maybe they work a different schedule because of who knows what. But just understand when they can work, when they can't. Somebody who we work with, she starts her day every morning in her messaging app. When she's ready to start, she'll go in the team and she'll say good morning. And because she's communicated with her team, they all know what that means. That means, hey, I'm at my desk, open for business. Now you can shoot me all these questions. And that's really important, because communication is not easy. That's one of the main things I learned in the military. It's easy to say, well, you need to talk, but communication, successful communication and collaboration, it requires you to really understand each other and make sure that you're on the same page. And so something as easy as saying, hello, I'm here for business, is critically important in my mind. And a final thing I would say is, when you're working with people, whether remotely or not, ask them how they like to communicate. And look, if you're remote, there's only 3 ways to communicate. There's email, there's chat, well, 4. Email, chat, a call, an audio call, or a video call. And just talk it through so okay, and then you can even get more granular. And this is where taking the time and doing I don't know if you call it training or just figuring out what works best for you. We got very granular in the military. When this happens, we can talk this way, and then it can escalate to this. And even though we spent that time up front, boy, did it save a lot of time and prevented a lot of mistakes by having that pre-arranged and pre-understood. So we knew what to do when, and if I got a phone call I knew was important, that type of thing. So just ask people how they like to communicate, and then make an effort to communicate the way they want to be communicated with.
That's awesome. I'm actually everything that you've mentioned goes right in line with, and I'm going to tweet this out to folks. So you're going to have to look it up, people, but it's called the Drexler Civet model. And this is what I was trained in. And it does exactly, it has a 7-step process to, like, what they call WOW, high performing teams. And I'm not going to get into the granular ones, but just like you said, the very, very first one is that you have to understand why you are part of the team. So first, inside yourself, you have to know, like, why am I here? What do I bring to the team? And the second one is you have to establish a level of trust. Like, can I trust you? Can you trust me? And then it gets into the stuff of what are we doing, and who's responsible for what, blah, blah, blah. But I think those initial steps are so important. So I have a sneaky tip based on the Drexler Civet model that goes right into what you were talking about, which is caring about people. One of the exercises they have us do, they call it a mandala, like the pretty design that you do in the sand, but you can do it as a quadrant, or you could do it any way you want. But the important thing is that that you share this with your group. What is it like? The gift I bring to the group, kind of what their personal goals are, what their professional goals are, and there's like another one. Oh, a frustration that I have. Mm-hmm. So you can act, and then everybody, but you're not allowed, the name of the game is, and you can do this whether you're virtual or whether you're face-to-face, is you have to do the whole thing with images. You cannot write out words. You must either draw something or some visual representation, and then everyone goes around and shares that. And what I think is really wonderful is that brings out exactly what's most important to everyone on the team, so that you know that maybe somebody's aiming for a promotion, or maybe they want to learn a particular technical skill or something, so that now it's out in the open, and now you can like really, really help each other achieve those goals. And and the other thing the Drexler Civet model does that I would really recommend folks to look up is they'll say, when it's working, this is what life looks like. When it's not working, this is what you're experiencing. So at every phase of the process, you know that something's wrong. Like you could feel you know what I'm talking about, where communication just breaks down. People are pissed. People are like, whatever. Yeah. And you stop and you're like, oh, wait a minute. We're not sure about what the goal is. Like somebody had a meeting and something shifted and maybe we didn't get the communication, but like right away you can, hey, something's wrong. We need to get clarity. So those are like some of the things that I take with me when I'm working with teams.
And it's talking about, are there any problems, this and that. It's not very practical, but something we did, I've done in the Air Force and a couple other places, but if you have a small team that works really well together, and it really depends on your job, but you could do like a quick daily touch base. Hey, yes. How's everybody's projects going? Does anybody have any problems? Does anybody secretly hate somebody else and you're waiting for somebody to ask you, are there any problems? What fires do we need to put out? It's a daily stand-up of a few minutes. And it's not always practical for all environments in business and all teams, but I really feel like that's a best practice, just to build a strong, close team and to maintain that closeness. So when things go wrong, you talk about it every day and you get comfortable talking about those problems, and then you bring everybody together to help figure out what the best way out of your predicament is.
That is great advice. So let's wrap this puppy up by talking about actual technologies, right? Because, it does depend on how you work. And there's lots of different tools out there. Slack is popular. Glip has a platform. What are some technologies that are out there? And maybe how do you go about choosing one that's like, that you think is going to work for you?
Well, I think when it comes to what technologies you can use for your remote team, there's the thing that's the most important is your business applications. So, if you're using Salesforce, if all these things that you're doing to actually do your job, let's put aside for a second how you communicate. If you're using an engineering software program to write code or a design thing to do creative stuff for marketing, you need to have applications that work anywhere, and those are probably going to be in the cloud. It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, where 10, 15 years ago, and then some companies today who are not as advanced, they may have the quote ability for you to go home and log into your VPN and work on it, but then it takes a half hour to load. That's not practical. So first and foremost, you have to have business applications that revolve around or that let you do your job, because worst case, you can just talk to people on your own cell phone when it comes to communication. So that's number one, that has to be there. And that's where you find a lot of cloud solutions for these software cloud solutions work really well. Now, when it comes to communication, the first thing that most people use is email, and that's a no-brainer. Everybody has email. Then the other things are voice, chat for messaging, and video, I would say. And when I talk about video, I include screen sharing, because screen sharing is really, really critical. If there's anything that's important to me to foster remote work, it's screen sharing. Because when you walk into a meeting or you go to somebody's desk, most of the time you're showing them something. Let me show you on my screen. Let me show you this printout. So screen sharing is critically important for you to get work done. Otherwise, if we're face to face right now and I have my piece of paper here and you have your piece of paper here, we're gonna have a hell of a time understanding what we're supposed to be doing if we're not screen sharing.
Correct.
So, when it comes, a lot of it comes down to your choice. There's a lot of different tools out there. For voice, you can use your own cell phone and you guys can just exchange personal numbers. There's a lot of cloud solutions out there. RIngCentral offers one where you can literally have a business phone number and a business service that sits on top of the internet and on top of your cell phone. So you don't have to share your personal number. For video calls and chats, there's a whole host of them out there that you can look at. Yes, video is important, but I think for the day-to-day grind of working when you're remote or not remote is really messaging. It's finding a good team messaging solution that helps you move projects along, because like we were saying, both me and you are the type who will go tap people on the shoulder, but that disturbs people. So that's the virtual tap by sending a chat. It really, really moves projects along so much better than email and so much better than live conversation. So I would find a team messaging solution that works for you, and spend a lot of time looking around and finding something that's your team likes to use and that will help move projects along and not just be a chat tool, I would say.
So here's the challenge, right? And all of us, like you had mentioned, right? All of us have our favorite email platforms, right? There's email, lots of people have Skype, lots of people have, right, their phone or whatever. And somehow intellectually it seems logical that you would want to have a place where all your stuff is in one place, right? One workplace where everything is right there. And that makes total sense to me, right? But let's say, like, you know what I'm saying? And then what if your team isn't using that? And then you like to use a place that's all in one, but then everyone's in email. How do you coordinate that stuff? Or like, do you just say, all you people, you got to be in this one place?
Well, it's like we were talking about a few minutes ago. I mean, it's with all this information overload and so many options, I mean, it's a messy place right now. And there's a lot of options. And really, it's going to be up to you and your team and your business to pick the solution that's right for you. I think if you're talking regularly and you're creating a close team that works well together, you'll talk about what the best tools are to use. Because if there's 10 people on your team and 3 people don't want to use, Glip or Skype, then like you have a problem, because you really want everybody to be on the same system. Or you can find a workaround. Oh, Ivana really likes email. Oh, but Paul really likes chat. So only email her and only chat him. Right. I think the best thing to do is just openly talk about it and see what people use or what people prefer. And then don't be deterred, because just because somebody prefers something at the outset doesn't mean that they can't be brought on board with new things, like my mom with Bitmoji, I'm sure it took her a bit when we showed it to her, but we love Bitmoji and now she loves it and she's all about it.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. And, but there's a lot, and I can tell you a lot of people in this chat, a lot of people watching are people like me. So I engage with a bunch of different teams, right? And I have a group that likes to use, what was it called? Basecamp. They have another group that likes to use Trello. And then I have a third group that likes Asana. And I'm like, I know them all, so I'm fine with all of them, right? But what if I wanted to use Glip or Slack or something like, right? What if I wanted to use a platform to manage all of these different conversations? This is where I think my world and your world kind of whatever. Or do they? Explain that to me, right?
Well, if you have customers or partners that are using Slack and Glip and Skype, but today those don't talk to each other. And so the reality is you have a lot of people using a lot of different applications. And I think one of the most important things, okay, so we're talking about remote work and how one of the key benefits of having a remote workforce is you can find the best talent. Because you're in Cleveland, that person is not going to pick up and leave Seattle because they have their family there. So your choice is you either force somebody to move to Cleveland, in which case you get better talent, or you say, I'm going to sacrifice on them moving and do remotely and get the better talent. You're not going to force them. The best option is not to force them. And I feel like it's the same thing with these communications applications. Find the one that works for you. The reality is a lot of us are going to be using multiple ones, especially if you deal with a lot of different clients and vendors in your business. And it's probably unavoidable right now, and I don't know that it's the worst thing in the world. You know, it's okay.
It's just a choice. Wow, Paul, can you believe that the hour has passed? Like the click and clack say.
This is a great conversation.
Right? You have just now spent a whole hour talking about collaboration in workforce. Thank you so much for being on Bizapalooza Chat. The conversation everywhere has been awesome. I want to thank all of our viewers as they go dropping off. So, and remember, we also meet Thursday nights at 8 p.m. We're totally unplugged. It's tweet chat only, and we just like dish on all kinds of stuff. I don't know what we're dishing on Thursday, but I will be sure to tell you on. Just have to follow Bizapalooza Chat. You'll find out. Thank you for being here, Paul, and the folks at Glip.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.